More on this, I'm joined from our Durban studios by Shafrudeen Amod. He's a medical law consultant. Thank you so much for joining us. Some very serious claims coming out of just the first day of this SA Human Rights Commission. The first one from the National Healthcare Professional Association, accusing medical aides of spying on doctors for suspecting of being fraudsters, and another one being a very serious accusation of racism, saying medical practitioners are struggling to get payments based on the color of their skin. These are very, very serious accusations in a very important sector in our country.
Good afternoon, Marcel. Yes, yes, indeed, there are serious allegations, and they are not baseless allegations. They are allegations that have been brewing for quite a while, and I think things have come to a fore now where the South African Human Rights Commission has intervened, and there's also a Section 59 Commission of Inquiry established into these very allegations. We would not get a Section 59 Commission of Inquiry had these allegations been made lightly. These are serious allegations, and the inquiry is justified, and so is the preliminary investigation by the South African Human Rights Commission.
Now, when it comes to the medical sector and medical aid schemes, as it were, anecdotally, when people speak about the medical aid schemes that they are with or their experiences with it, there's kind of a blanket rolling of the eyes, almost similar to how people talk about the insurance industry, that it's an industry that's a law unto their own, that they move the goalposts, and that the little guy, the people paying their monthly fee to those medical aids, are kind of left to just take whatever decision comes their way. But this involves allegations coming from practitioners, as it were. How far do you think the Commission, this SA Human Rights Commission, can go in trying to get to the bottom of these serious allegations? What kind of power do you think they'll be able to have over allegations like this?
Marcel, we must understand what the true allegation is and how it affects patient care ultimately. We must understand that practitioners have been targeted for a long time, specifically black and Indian practitioners, with regards to random audits, with regards to illegal stoppage of payments, being forced into sign non-disclosure agreements, the clawing back system as such, where they find practitioners guilty on their own. The issue is not so much what they're doing, but how they go about doing it. Medicaids have now devolved into becoming a medical insurance, for want of a better word. So any decision that a medical aid takes with regards to a patient or a patient's treatment becomes a financial or an actuarial decision rather than a clinical decision. I'm sitting with patient affidavits, I'm sitting with practitioner affidavits as to the racial profiling in terms of what's going on. And unfortunately, the racial profiling is targeting black and Indian practitioners who tend to be the majority of practitioners in rural areas. And the most of the patients that are affected are from a lower socioeconomic background. So basically, when we look at it in totality, by targeting, racially profiling the practitioner, you're preventing the patient from accessing healthcare, which is a constitutional right. So when a constitutional right is infringed, whether it is upon the practitioner or the patient, the South African Human Rights Commission must step in. And this is a preliminary hearing to listen to everybody, to bring together the organizations, to bring together the medical aids, and let everybody have their say. And once this preliminary hearing is over, they will make a decision as to how to proceed and what steps to take. But clearly, there is sufficient evidence out there for a Commission of Inquiry and for the South African Human Rights Commission to start a full-scale inquiry into these allegations.
Now, as a medical law consultant, and you say you're working on a number of cases of this nature, how do you go about building a case like this, which you believe involves racial profiling as part of a decision-making process by a big medical aid scheme?
I must start with the major stumbling block first, Marcel, because the medical aids are not forthcoming with their statistics. They're not forthcoming with their methodology. So when a practitioner receives a letter, a so-called audit from the medical aid, they're requested to provide a lot of information that these forensic departments should not be privy to in terms of the law, because it's confidential information. They then request that the practitioner meet with them to discuss a way forward. At that meeting, there is no negotiation. Practitioners are bullied into signing a non-disclosure agreement and given an arbitrary amount to pay back to the medical aids. When we look at building a case, we must understand that the Medical Schemes Act was designed to protect the public and to ensure that medical aids function in a legal manner. We have no issue with a medical aid taking up a case of so-called alleged fraud with a practitioner. But you need to follow the rule of law. The rule of law indicates, and the Medical Schemes Act indicates, that proper steps should be taken. For example, inform the Health Professionals Council about that particular practitioner. Number two, South African Police Services should be informed in terms of a fraud case. Now, when we ask for that information from the medical aids, they're not forthcoming with it. It becomes almost covert and secretive information. I've personally liaised with forensic departments at 2 medical aids, and I must say it's very cloak and dagger. And that gives me cause for concern, because we should not have reached the stage where we need a commission of inquiry, or we need the South African Human Rights Commission to investigate. If there was transparency in the way the medical aids acted, we wouldn't have reached the stage. And the sad reality is that the patient is the one who suffers in the end, because the practitioner is unable to provide a reasonable service to the patient because he's not being reimbursed by the medical aid, which has a contractual obligation to the patient.
One seems to find that more and more medical practitioners are asking their patients to pay up front or to pay for the services being rendered to them, and then it's up to the patient to claim that money back from the medical aid schemes. Is that pattern as a result of practitioners no longer wanting to wrestle with medical aids in this manner?
I would agree with you, absolutely. A lot of practitioners, end up fighting for their payment. And let me be clear that practitioners submitting claims to medical aids are doing it on a good faith basis, meaning that they expect to be paid. And the Medical Schemes Act makes provision for it, for claims to be paid within 30 days. If, for example, there is a problem with a particular claim, whether it is an incorrect diagnosis or there's suspected fraud, the medical aid has 30 days in which to query that and ask the practitioner to resubmit. Now, you must remember that this is a lot of administrative work. So asking the patient to pay cash is unfortunately the last resort that the practitioner has, because there's overheads, there's expenses, and that cannot be paid without the medical aids paying healthcare practitioners timeously. Withholding payment illegally is just not on, and it affects the patient directly, and because it is rural areas that are targeted or poor socioeconomic areas that are targeted, unfortunately those patients just don't have the funds to pay cash up front.
And now, speaking of a case like that, you were asked recently to speak on a matter involving a woman in KwaZulu-Natal. And the case is a legal matter at the moment, but it involves a medical aid allegedly not keeping up with its payments for dialysis treatment for a woman. And that woman eventually died because she couldn't pay for those payments up front. So these are life and death decisions being made by organizations of whom you are saying not enough is known about their decision-making process on the other side of that call center.
Marcel, that was a very sad case indeed, yes. Unfortunately, it took a patient's life for this issue to get a bit more publicity, but unfortunately, it was a medical aid that was not keeping up with their payments in terms of their contractual relationship with the patient. And the patient missed 3 sets of dialysis, and obviously passed on because of that. And that case is now being referred to a legal practitioner, which is handling the case on behalf of the family. Dr. Sukhdev Supasad is handling that on behalf of the family, and legal opinion has been sought, and we obviously have found sufficient evidence to proceed with a case against the medical aid.
Okay, we're going to leave it there for now. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us. That is medical law consultant Shafrudeen Amod coming to us live there from Durban. Thank you so much.